An important aha moment is that we need to differentiate between current incentives and future incentives. Current incentives, to a certain degree, will be very difficult to do without them, but we can repurpose them. We can repurpose them to outcome-oriented initiatives that will improve health system performance and patient outcomes, as well as the new ones. Then we need to think if we need them at all. So before we run with more and more and more incentives, let's do a very good diagnosis of what are the issues, and are those issues solved with financial incentives versus other policy tools that we have at our disposal. The other piece that is critical, and that we continue, in my view, not to leverage and utilize to its fullest, is public engagement. And to me, actually, that is the biggest incentive. If you look at a well-educated, well-engaged citizen, and if you just multiply that by hundreds and thousands, I think it will become an incentive for the health system to change, to respond to what the public is saying are their priorities. Likely we will end up with much less procedures and much more quality of life at certain stages in life. And we will end up with a more open and transparent discussion and dialogue. And they will understand then that rapid cycles that enable us to bring innovation, whether it is through financial incentives or through other policy tools, require tweaking, that you don't necessarily get it right at the beginning. For that it's important, though, to have an enlightened public that will be willing to go along with the retweaking, that will not see it as a political failure. And I believe that that's completely doable. And by the way, there is quite a bit we can learn about public engagement from the UK, that has been doing huge amounts of public engagement for decades. So let me start by saying that it's not as if we have been doing nothing so far. So it is, how can we enhance what we are doing? How can we do some things different? And how can we fast track what we are doing in many ways? And I think it's at all the layers. It's at the macro level of government. I was speaking with some of the participants that come from government today about the issue of public engagement and why is it that it's not sufficiently happening. I think that on the issue of both accepting that at times we make a health system transformation that is not successful, and being able to very quickly analyze and retweak accordingly is something that we are not very used to do. We believe that we do health system transformation and it's kind of a set song sheet. No, it needs retweaking, and I think that we need to mature as a health system and know that whether it's at the macro, at the meso, or at the micro level of professionals, that we will need to retweak. The perfect example at RNO is the evidence-based practice guidelines program, right? Yes, it's quite tremendous. Yes, it's being used across the world, but we are constantly retweaking. We are constantly, as new evidence comes, for example, about more rigorous ways to develop guidelines or more rigorous ways to do KT. And now with all the area of evaluation that we are engaging, no doubt we will need to continue to retweak. And in fact, if we don't do, we are staying behind. If we don't do the initiatives, whether it is best practice guidelines or in this case, health system transformation, which is even more enormous, if we don't retweak, it means that we are not using the latest evidence to bear into where we are taking the system. So we shouldn't see it as failures. We should see it as normal part of the process.